to the Web3 Prof Podcast.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I am here with Ganesh Swami, who is the co-founder and CEO of Covalent. Thanks for being with me here today.
Jared, excited to be here.
So let's jump right in. Can you tell me how did you get into Web3 and maybe ladder that story into founding or co-founding Covalent?
Absolutely. So my entry into Web3 is quite accidental. And I come from a data background. I've been doing databases for much of my career. And one rainy Saturday afternoon, a friend tells me about this hackathon that was happening at one of the studios here. And with nothing else to do, went out and attended that hackathon.
What year was this?
This would have been 2017.
Okay.
So,
was crypto running up at that time?
yes, this was just at the tail end of the previous bull market.
Yeah.
And so went to that hackathon, and this is a database company that was building a database for crypto assets, and ended up building a project which ended up winning the hackathon. And so that project is what is today Covalent.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the genesis story of Covalent.
Yeah.
And until then, I had thought blockchains and crypto were mostly a joke because I didn't understand the ethos and the political and economic story behind crypto. And from a pure tech perspective, blockchains are not competitive with databases from a technology perspective, but that's not the point, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot more to crypto than just technology.
Yeah.
And so once we ended up winning that hackathon, then it was a question of whether I was running another startup at that time, whether to continue with that startup or jump all into this new startup.
Right. Can you tell us about what your previous startup was?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I've been run the block multiple times. I started my career in pharmaceutical sciences, so building cancer drugs. And that company today is Canada's biggest biotech company.
Wow.
It's called Zymeworks. It's just a couple of blocks from here, and listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So it's a big kind of win for not just the team, but also community and for the patients, of course.
Did you bring it public?
Yeah, it's listed on the New York Stock Exchange.
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't bring it personally, but I was part of that employee number one there.
Yeah.
And then the problem for me was pharmaceutical sciences just takes a decade to get any kind of product out in the market, and it felt like my life was slipping away. And it was just like my friends were in the technology sector, were starting companies and getting funded and going through M&A and exit acquisitions in 18 months or less. And here I was still, putting the business plan together 2 years in. So then it was time for me to pivot out of those and do something that was more fast-paced, more in line with what I wanted to do. So I switched directly into like database technology. Yeah. And so that's what I've been doing for more than a decade now. Wow. And so, one leads into the other. So Covalent is that perfect connection between databases and blockchains. Right. And so what started out as an intellectual curiosity, an itch I wanted to scratch, has turned into something much bigger than what I'd anticipated 5 years ago.
So what is the difference between just a regular database and blockchain?
So the key difference is centralization. So a database is centralized. What that means is that it's under the custody of a company that hosts that database. Yeah. So a good example here is that if you have a TD account, if TD for any reason were to tack on, let's say, an extra cent after every transaction, you would never know. Right. It's not really tamper resistant. Yeah. Right. It's not really censorship resistant because it's all under the custody of that TD bank, for example. That's just an analogy. I'm not saying TD is doing that. Just an example.
Disclosure.
Not financial advice. So in a blockchain, what happens is that now this is cryptographically secure. So this is going to be either multiple independent parties ensuring the security of the blockchain, so it's tamper resistant. And if you try to tamper with that data, you'll be disclosed as someone who's a bad actor. Yeah. So that is a key difference between a database and a blockchain. Yeah. At the end of the day, they both store data, but one comes with trust guarantees, and the other is centralized. Yeah. So that's what I would say is a key difference.
Okay, interesting. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit about working in the world of Web3. So maybe first tell us, in your opinion, when you're going to go to, summer parties or Christmas parties, and people are going to ask you, what is Web3 or what do you do? And maybe you reference Web3 or something like that. How do you explain this kind of newer term?
Absolutely. So, in all fairness, Web3 is a term that has only become popular in the last 2 years or so. When we started, there was no Web3, there was
Right.
no NFT, there was no DeFi, right? So, I
Right.
knew that blockchains were a general horizontal piece of technology, like a WordPress, right? You can use WordPress for entertainment. You can use it
Yeah.
for media. You can use
Right.
it for the legal industry. So, it's just a
Yeah.
piece of technology. So, in my mind, this is how I think about the evolution of the internet. So Web 1, which is from the mid to late 90s, is a read-only kind of interface, which means it'll be like Yahoo Pages, GeoCities, so you read recipes and fan sites and so on.
Yeah.
Web 2 is read and write, where you had social media, so you have like Facebook and Twitter, where you can contribute. And the problem there is that all of that data is hoarded by these for-profit corporations.
Right.
So Facebook owns all your data, and then they monetize it via ads and so on. Web3 is read, write, and own. So the underlying data infrastructure, the underlying asset infrastructure is owned by the participants. And it's not like some for-profit corporation
Yeah.
that is monetizing your data. It really literally belongs to the people. So that's read, write, own, which is the key differentiator between Web 1 and Web 2.
Yeah.
So that's how I would think about
Yeah.
the evolution of the internet.
Okay, that's great. So, what does Covalent do? So you kind of mentioned databases and blockchain at some intersection here. So, what do you guys actually do that the common regular guy on the street might be able to understand?
Absolutely. So Covalent comes from covalent bonds in chemistry. So
I don't know anything about that.
yeah, well, apologies for those harsh memories from high school, but that's what covalent bonds are. It's one of the chemical bonds, and so covalent exposes a Web 2 interface to Web 3 technologies.
Okay.
So this is supposed to be a stepping stone or a bridge or a bond between well understood database technologies, which have been around for 40, 50 years, and this new Web 3 blockchain technology that not a lot of people understand. So the key insight here is that for enterprise mainstream adoption, your Web3 technologies are never in a greenfield standalone kind of environment. It always has to coexist with existing investments in technology and people. So even to this date, they're fax machines, right? There's always transitionary technology that enables the adoption of a newer piece of technology. And so here, Covalent bridges that gap between Web 2 and Web 3. So for a person who uses Web 2 technologies like Excel and Tableau and all the standard database technologies, they can now adopt Web 3 technologies without retraining or retooling. So it really reduces the barrier to mainstream adoption.
Okay.
So that is the key benefit of having something like Covalent. It's
Yeah.
a data middleware kind of solution.
So, what type of customers, or who would your customers be? Are they brands that people would be familiar with, consumer-facing brands?
Yeah, they are. So the opportunity for Covalent is in three major kind of industries or verticals. And the Web3 native greenfield deployments, the Web3 native, crypto native use cases are not that exciting. So if you understand market structures, it starts with the innovators and the early adopters and the early majority. So that's Christensen's classic market structure where you cross the chasm. And so not all technologies cross the chasm. So things that are stuck in that first or second phase never reach mainstream adoption and they just peter out. So to cross the chasm, you have the more traditional Web 2 giants like your Salesforce and your Reddits and your Tiffany's that are adopting Web 3 technologies. So our three major verticals are DeFi and FinTech. So traditional FinTech companies adding like a Web 3 DeFi kind of experience. The second would be the NFTs and the brands like loyalty points. So this would be the Starbucks, this would be the Tiffany's, this would be the D&Gs that are issuing NFTs for loyalty or, luxury goods, for example. And the third would be GameFi, where traditional AAA and AA gaming studios now adding a Web3 experience to their existing portfolio of games. So just like that, how they have like PlayStation and Xbox games and maybe like Facebook games and maybe like mobile games. Now Web3 games is just another avenue for reaching players. So these are the three major verticals, and in every vertical you have the early adopters, which are native games, so DeFi native projects, and then you have the big banks that are now starting to adopt Web3 technologies. And so here it's more of a traditional go-to-market where you're selling into regular Web2 companies that are curious or doing experiments with Web3 technologies. So that's where the chasm is being crossed.
That's fascinating. So is Web 2.5 a thing, and are you guys like kind of assisting in the transition into Web 3?
The only reason for Covalent is for that Web 2.5. That's what it is.
Right. Okay. Fascinating. Okay, let's talk about working in Web 3. So you know, we met about a year ago, and your company's been growing for a number of years. It's super fascinating and a great success story here locally in Vancouver. And I hear from people in the field that there's a lot of opportunities to work in Web3. So why would somebody want to work in this field? And I'm not talking necessarily just about like developers, you know, marketers, HR people, bookkeepers, accountants, I don't know, anybody really. Why would someone be drawn into this field that we so commonly talk about?
Yeah, so there's I think it depends on the personality, right? So some people move towards fast water. What that means is that technology are constantly changing. There's a new paradigm on the horizon every year. There are certain personalities that like that kind of work. There are some people who like things that don't change that often, right? So maybe in like the banking structure, industry, for example. So for people who are more forward-thinking, they'll love to tinker with a lot of the newer technologies. Maybe the technology is not around in a year and a half. Web3 is a perfect place to come in here. Now, what is beautiful about Web3 is that it's not just attracting technologists, because Web3 is not just about technology, but also an economic and a political and a social revolution. So it's attracting people who are in line with the inequalities that's in society, the lack of access to opportunities that is globally available, things like that. So they've made that mission of Web3 a personal mission, and that's why they would join a Web3 project.
I love that. Like I wrote my grad thesis on the effects of microfinance on community-based tourism as a method of poverty relief. And I was looking at like small villages and how they could like explore, microfinance as a way to, buy, a small amount of product to sell to travelers, and it was really to try to figure out how can we kind of make the world a better place. And then when I learned about Bitcoin and Satoshi and decentralization and all this kind of stuff, that's really what drew me. It was kind of the ideologies of Web3. It wasn't called Web3 at that time, but it was kind of like the vision of this. And sometimes I look at where we are in Web3 and I think, boy, we've lost our way. But hopefully there's enough people like yourselves and Covalent who are kind of still pounding the drum or drawing into some of these important values. Is that still something that you guys fight for?
Absolutely. So we've been around for 5 years now. So 5 years is a long time to be in the crypto scene.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've ever, there were definitely, parts during that journey where I was disillusioned with the previous bear market, the difficulty in raising capital, recruiting, all kinds of challenges. But today, I think with everything else that's happening in society, with all of the, I would say, unfairness, all of the fraud that's happening, all of the lack of access to what is honest and what is truth, has actually increased my resolve in getting these technologies out to the mainstream. So
That's amazing.
Continue to be, on point when it comes to the mission.
That's great. When you're looking for, or when you're hiring, what do you look for in employees to work at Covalent?
So we're a traditional like Web2 kind of company, right? So we sell into existing businesses and we build software the traditional way. There's not a lot of like crypto specific stuff at Covalent, which is surprising, but we are an enabling piece of technology. So I think we hire more regular people than what are known as like crypto natives or degens.
What's a degen?
A degen is a degenerate. So people who are pseudo-anonymous on Twitter. They probably have like a face profile picture,
Yeah.
and they're into all these yield farming and all these Ponzi schemes, and they flip these NFTs, and I in fact have a T-shirt that I'm wearing inside with all of the degen keywords, like right-click save. So right-click save is a terminology for NFTs,
Right.
because NFTs are just pictures. And why is it worth a few $1,000s? You
Right.
just right-click save, right?
Right.
And then OG.
Yes.
Stuff like that, right? So it's all like the meme culture, it's all vibes. There's not a lot of that at Covalent. We're more like, I think we're a little more grown up, a little more mature, maybe a little less fun than the traditional Web3 kind of structure. But that's why, our business is expanding. We're dramatically growing during the bear market, while, most other kinds of like weaker projects which don't have product market fit are starting to shudder and starting to like stall in their growth.
Do you think that has like I talk to a lot of kind of crypto people, and there's a lot of hype and nonsense. And you come across as like fairly pragmatic, and level-headed and practical. Do you think that has, and the way that you've operated and co-founded Covalent, does that have a relationship to the success and longevity you've had? Because, I mean, Bitcoin started 13 years ago. You've been around for 5 years. That is a massive portion of the time that this whole thing even existed. You've been around for an eternity in this world.
Yeah, there's two things here, right? So first is that I'm an infrastructure guy. I'm not an application guy. So to give you some color on what this means is, think of airports versus airplanes. So when the first airplanes started flying, there were no airports. You don't need the infrastructure. But eventually, as the airplanes got more powerful and had more traction, you needed the infrastructure to support the application. And then as the airports started to be to get better airplanes started to be built. Now they're like special airports for special planes. Like if you're flying private, I don't think you can go. I don't know too much about it, but I don't think you can go.
You're not flying.
YVR. Yeah,
you're not flying private all the time.
Exactly. So I don't think you can just go to YVR and just park your private jet there.
Right.
I don't think that's how it works. So you need different kinds of infrastructure for that. So it's the same thing with any kind of like sector, right? It's the same thing with the Industrial Revolution. It's the same thing with like paper technology. It's the same thing with it's like the Bible was the first thing that was printed in the printing press, and the Bible would be the application. The printing press would be the infrastructure, right? So it's always a seesaw motion, and so I am clearly in the infra space, not in the application space. So I think it's still early for all of the social lending and the microfinances. Those are all applications of the infrastructure. So that's one thing. So the infrastructure phase is how the internet was built. It's how any technology reaches mainstream adoption. So that's, focused on infra is where my expertise lies. And therefore, we've never wavered from that. We've never built applications. And I don't think we'll ever build applications.
Right.
The second thing, which I think is more of an entrepreneurial journey, is that a lot of people focus on things that change, which I think is a mistake. I think you should focus on things that don't change. So what is not going to change? People are not going to retrain themselves. People are not going to throw away Excel and Tableau and their existing tools. People are not going to they're not going to fire people to do compliance or reporting just because of this new database like technology. Those things are never going to change, right? You have like gravity, you have legacy infrastructure, you have investments, and so you want to reuse those. So that's never going to change.
Right.
And so just because you have Web3 doesn't mean that, so what, right?
Yeah.
So you still speak English, you still have rows and columns, and you still use Excel and you use Tableau. That's not going to change. So our focus is more on things that don't change. And so when you focus on things that don't change, it doesn't matter if it's like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's still the same, right?
Yeah.
People still want to respect other people. People still want to understand the value of certain things. So I think focusing on things that don't change gives you a more long-term perspective. So that's why we've been able to work on this for 5+ years. And, the traction is just growing and growing and growing because these things don't change ever.
So when we look at jobs in Web3, what kind of jobs are out there? What kind of people have you been hiring over the last couple of years, and what type of jobs have you seen out there?
So primarily at Covalent, we build and then we ship. Those are the two major roles. So build is all the engineering and product people. So it's like the problem definition, the solution definition, iteration on both. The engineers build it, the product people, they package it, position it, product marketing communicates that, and then the sell or the ship is the go-to-market. So this depends on the kind of product. So some products of ours are like a marketing-driven kind of project. Some of it is sales-driven kind of go-to-market. Some of it is like product-led. So it really depends on the product line and the audience. And so these are the two primary kinds of people that we hire. So engineers, product people, designers on the build side, and then the go-to-market would be marketing, would be sales, and account execs, SDRs, market response reps, all the stuff that goes with.
Okay, so one thing I think I don't think a lot of people think about it is that like a Web3 company is a company. Like they need to have all the staff other companies have. Like you need to have HR people and training people and finance people and all this kind of stuff. Do you see that the people who work in that aspect of the business, are they joining Covalent and other Web3 companies because they're super passionate about Web3? Or are they just HR people that happen to find themselves, I don't know, they know somebody who worked at Covalent and that's how they got connected? Do you know what I mean?
So we've been lucky that all of the non-build and sell people are all Web3 like fans.
Okay.
So our CFO, Adrian, has written white papers on crypto economics before, right? So he's so deep in.
I mean, who hasn't really?
Yeah. Even before Covalent, right? Even before I met him. So he's deeply passionate about these technologies, and then he's also the CFO, so he does budgeting and financing and ERP implementation, all that stuff, which I don't know too much about, but he does speak the language. So I think that's where if you're intellectually curious, it's a great fit, right? It's not just doing your day-to-day job, which you probably have credentials for and you've been trained for, and you have the expertise in. But also the Web3 stuff, you can always look around and then talk to anyone in the company. So you're not just in a silo.
How important is that to be able to speak the language, to be able to know what decentralization is or whatever?
Not that important. Yeah, It's not that important because you can pick it up.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, these things are fast changing.
Yeah.
So things that are flavor of the day today won't be around in a year.
Yeah.
So it's not that important. In fact, our go-to-market people are people we hire good salespeople and good marketing people, not good Web3 salespeople, because that intersection is very small.
Okay. And is that because there's just not that many people out there that know about Web3 that work in accounting or bookkeeping or HR? Is that why?
It's very early days, right? Just to give you some numbers here, some perspective, Covalent has about 35,000 devs. So we build a developer product, 35,000 developers on our platform. The biggest developer product in the space has about 300,000 developers. So we're about 10% of that size. And the number of developers on something like GitHub, for example, is 30 million. So even the biggest project in Web3 only has 1% market penetration.
Wow.
And we are at 0.1%. So it puts it in perspective for what a leading project, what is the reach, right? So it's still very early days. I think we're still due for another 100x growth in the next couple of years.
I mean, we hear this like we're very early on crypto Twitter all the time, you know, and I guess what you're saying is you agree with that. You agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we see kind of market turmoil, the collapse of Voyager and FTX and Celsius and all of these types of things that happen going back to like Mt. Gox and wherever, how much do these things affect your business? Does it, because out of these things often happen layoffs and collapse of the market, the valuations of prices in crypto go down. Does that create opportunities for you to hire good people because maybe they got laid off? Does it cause you problems? Does it not impact you at all because you're fairly kind of isolated outside of like traditional crypto? How does that affect you guys?
Yeah, great questions. So first is what do I think with everything that's happening in the broader scene? And I think every company that has failed or has gone under has been because of a traditional form of fraud.
Mm.
It's nothing special with Web3, right? So they, like in the case of FTX, they took customer deposits. That's legal, right? In the case of Voyager, I think they did like massive leverage, and then they were not able to do the margin calls, right?
Yeah.
So those are all traditional problems, right?
Yeah.
So, but DeFi has never had a single problem in the past, couple of years.
Yeah.
Because everything is on chain, everything is visible, it's transparency. You can't just take funds that is in a pool that is not yours just because in the same bank account, everything is transparent. Those are all the benefits. So all of these projects failing is actually a testament to how concrete DeFi and the need for DeFi is in the broader scene. So it should actually increase the adoption of DeFi and crypto native projects. That's the whole point. The whole point of having DeFi is to solve problems where banks are able to take customer deposits and use it like their own money. Like that's illegal.
I'm so glad you're explaining that, because I feel like that's not a narrative that we necessarily hear. Maybe in crypto we hear that, but I don't even think in the world of crypto you hear about this. Like the importance of these failures they're not what Web3 really is. This is just traditional nonsense.
Exactly, right? There's always bad people. There's always bad actors. So it's not specific to Web3. Now, what sucks about FTX is that the way they positioned themselves were supposed to be the champions, the torchbearers of truth and, being legit. And, all of this happening behind the scenes is very unfortunate and very sad. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it matters as much. Come Jan, Feb, March next year, I think this would be yet another bullet point from last year. That's it.
It'll just be another thing on the list of next time I talk about this. It'll just be a longer list of failures that were centralized.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not really a big deal.
So it doesn't really affect you guys positively or negatively?
So it's both, right? So negatively in the short term, because now these enterprises that are starting to look and explore and do proof of concepts are now taking a pause, because no person in the enterprise wants to risk their career on something that is deemed to be risky. So that's a bummer, but it'll come around. The positive is that all the bad actors are getting flushed out, right? With the layoffs are not specific to Web3. It's a broader macro kind of like correction. All of tech is going through layoffs, right? So Salesforce has had layoffs, Facebook has had layoffs, Instagram, Snap, and so on. So we're just getting access to pools of talent that was previously either out of our reach or it's just been a very competitive market. So these are all positive signs for startups that are that have the capital. Yeah. And now is the time to double down on your investments. Yeah.
So when we hear the term like, the bear market is the time to build, is that a mantra you guys live by?
So in fact, it's the opposite, right? There's no bear market for builders. We have a campaign coming out next year. It's called Bear Market Builders. So it's a rallying cry for people who are building through the bear market to double down on their conviction. I just came from a big hackathon in India, ETH India. There were 2,000 hackers, and they were completely isolated from everything that's happening in the macro, right? So the bear market, I don't think it matters as much. Take Covalent, for example. We started Covalent at the tail end of the previous bull market, and 18 and 19 were very tough years. There was no capital, no investment opportunities. Like there's no way to raise capital, but we continued building because we believed in the future. So I don't think the builders are halting because somebody stole customer deposits, right? It's not really in their like rear view mirror. It's just not in that what they're thinking day to day. Yeah, they want to build something, and they've picked on something to work on.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, this is excellent. I think there was so many good things to learn about and understand, about Web3 and Covalent. I think you guys have continued to do a remarkable job and are a great story for our city here in Vancouver. It's really great to chat with you again, Ganesh, and I think everybody's going to really enjoy listening to this. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jared. Really enjoyed this.
Thanks.